Hey, what's going on, everyone? How you guys doing this morning? It's 12:20 a.m. It's at least on the Pacific Coast. It's late night. It's Tuesday, the 16th of June, 2020, and I'd like to welcome you guys to what I'm calling right now the Murder Death Kill podcast, this is not a planned thing. This is not going to be like individual videos. This is just I wanted to look at some of the cases that I've seen pop up that I feel aren't getting talked about as much. And I want to jump into a few of them that I found tonight that I just thought to be interesting, and it's a little bit of a little bit of late night fun, a little bit of late night fun here on the channel. If you want to call taking a look at these kind of cold cases as being late night and or fun, we'll see how it goes. This is just it's just something I had. I drank coffee earlier, and I thought to myself, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go out and I'm just gonna like cover some shit." However, if you guys do like it and you want to support it, you can always Streamlabs it right there, or you know what, just engage in the conversation. That's kind of the whole point of this, in my opinion, is really to just kind of have fun. I like to have fun. I like to talk about these things because there's a lot of weird stories out there, and I think I got a couple. I think I got a couple cool ones here. So let me just get myself a drink of water here. Okay, all good. All right, why don't we dive in to the first story here? This is actually one that I came across today from the Golden State Killer has actually agreed this time around to plead guilty. This is a guy that was like, I didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. And of course, he's pleading guilty right as HBO is getting ready to release the Golden State Killer documentary, their 6-part upcoming documentary about this guy, a hugely prolific, horrific son of a bitch. So it says here that the former police officer accused of terrorizing California during a series of rapes and killings nearly a half century ago, attributed to the Golden State Killer, is expected to plead guilty this month in a deal that would spare him the death penalty. Real quick, though, for one, I mean, look at this guy. He's 74 years old, and he's going to be, by the time he would even be up for the death penalty, I guarantee you he would probably just die of natural causes. So this is, you know what it is? He's going to plead guilty because he knows he's going to be in jail for the rest of his days, but he's going to do it in order to not end up on death row, which is 23 hours in a cage. He'll be able to go around Gen Pop, serve an existence for whatever remains of this guy's natural life. Anyway, Joseph James D'Angelo Jr., 74 years old, is set to enter a guilty plea to 13 murders and kidnapping charges for as many rapes as in a yet to be determined Sacramento courtroom on June 29th. And this is coming out. He's set to enter this guilty plea, I think, the day after this documentary comes out. It's one of those things. There's timing here. The timing couldn't be more perfect because everyone's going to be talking about this guy. So you might as well plead guilty to it now and get him out of the way before this goes wide on HBO and maybe more tips come in and more people get to talking about it. That's going to be a big factor here. Many sources who were notified about the legal arrangement spoke on condition of anonymity because they were asked to not disclose the deal to the media. Well, that didn't really last now, did it? Nor are any legal motions outlining the plea deal required to be filed in court before June 29th. Sources say D'Angelo was also agreed to admit to scores of crimes for which he is not charged, including rapes for which the statute of limitations has expired. So this guy at this point, just to show you how much of a monster he is, how much of a horrific, glorious monster this guy is going out there right now. He's like, I'm just going to admit to a lot of rapes. And since the statute of limitation has since expired on these rapes, you can't charge me. But I'm just going to clear the air. I'm going to clear my conscience, and I'm going to take that deal so I don't die on death row. It's kind of that's my interpretation of it. Now, the agreement is a significant development in a criminal saga that could have lasted years longer if it had gone to trial. That's true. But will now lack a public accounting of the evidence collected and the missteps committed by detectives over the course of the investigation. So you have to love here that they are, in essence, trying to go, well, this is going to protect the people who screwed up the case, who botched catching this guy for years, most of whom didn't know he existed. So they didn't know that it was one guy. But there's a big mistake there. So they're trying to. I think also at this point in time, given where we currently find ourselves with these protests, cops are like, we don't need any more bad press. We don't need it. Let's not have that. Saying here that it's a step forward, but not what I was hoping for, coming in from Chris Pedretti, one of the earliest victims who was raped when she was 15 back in 1976. Saying here that there are no criminal charges in connections with her attack, but Pedretti says she understands D'Angelo is prepared to admit to her rape. Saying, I already know he raped me, that he was guilty, but my deeper feeling is why? What is so important that he does not want shown in trial that he is willing to do this? What is it that he doesn't want to be known? And that is, again, going to be a very interesting factor. All of this information, is it going to allude to, did he have a partner? Did he have an accomplice? Were there people who were complicit? People who were helping him? Is any of this information going to come out? Is it going to destroy lives? Is he taking this hit in order to protect somebody? That's a very valid question. We don't know. Prosecutors had previously rebuffed D'Angelo's offer to plead guilty in exchange for life in prison. The COVID-19 pandemic played a role in persuading prosecutors to now agree, according to two of the sources. I don't get this. I don't get how COVID, yeah, it's raging in a lot of these prisons. People are getting it. I mean, it's well, he wants life in prison. Maybe he'll get COVID. Maybe he'll catch the Rona. We won't have to, we'll save us valuable taxpayer dollars. I feel like that's such a weird thing to use as a plot here. Going on, most witnesses and victims in the case are elderly, and some of them are grappling with health problems. The logistics of how to arrange for their testimony and to provide defense lawyers with the ability to cross-examine those witnesses without exposing them to the coronavirus were problematic. Said one. Okay, so that part makes a fair amount of sense. They're not worried about him. They're worried about other people who are witnesses who could contract it via transit, and they don't want to get them sick, and I understand that. District attorneys from 6 counties prosecuting D'Angelo issued a statement saying they have a moral and ethical responsibility to consider any offer from the defense given the massive scope of the case, the advanced age of many of the victims and witnesses, and our inherent obligations to the victims. I think that's pretty fair. The statement did not address whether a settlement had been reached and said prosecutors would have no additional comment until June 29. I don't quite know what they'd be settling on, if this is a legal matter versus a civil matter. Maybe my knowledge of the court isn't as good as it could be. Let's see. Victims of some of the crimes in the case voiced both relief and pain at the outcome. One here, Jennifer Cole, saying it's pragmatic. This makes sense. It is efficient. It is cost effective. It is ultimately where we are going to end. Her father, Lyman Smith, here was one of those who was killed. But Carol has been in tears since learning there will be no chance to see D'Angelo face the evidence against him in court, saying, so what is justice for that? I'm sitting with that every damn day. Well, I mean, I get it. I get the frustration. Her father died. She wants to look this man in the eye. She probably wants to yell at him and scream at him and say everything she can to him under the sun. Maybe they'll be able to pre-record their impact statements and send that in. That would be quite fascinating, wouldn't it? That'd be super interesting to me if that was the case. If they actually were able to pull that off, if they were able to do that, that'd be something fascinating. If they were able to sit there and go, okay, yeah, let's look, this guy's pleading guilty to avoid a trial. He's not going to face anybody, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to duct tape his eyes open, just like in A Clockwork Orange, and make him watch all of you just yell and scream at him on repeat. That's going to be his punishment. I don't really call it cruel and unusual because the dude is a dick. Anyway, it says others say they have no realistic way around the compromise. Ron Harrington, whose youngest brother Keith was bludgeoned to death alongside his wife Patrice in Dana Point 1980, said the Golden State Killer should be and will always be the poster child for the death penalty. And I look, this guy is he's an evil dude. And he was a cop, and he used that to get away with a lot of this stuff, to take forever. He only got busted because of DNA. That was it. I mean, and that's even other things we're going to be talking. Another story we're talking about today is going to have that too, where DNA played a big part in this. So to me, it's just wild. It's pretty wild that it's like the guys. I understand they want him dead, but it's again being pragmatic is kind of what you have to do. Let's see. Both my brother and I are very supportive of life without parole. This is coming in from the same guy. Now, Harrington and his family have spent decades advocating for the death penalty and expansion of databases containing the DNA of criminals. With that came continued pain. He says the plea deal will give us as much closure as we can achieve. Pretty much. I mean, this is the problem, I think, when you look at like these kind of cases, as horrific as they are, then the reality of the case sets in. This happened during like the 70s and 80s, and I think maybe some 90s. The guy is 74 years old. He doesn't have, he's probably going to die very soon. And he's willing to just take this plea deal because, like, screw it. What does he have to lose? I mean, like, legitimately, there's nothing at this point that is going to save this guy. So he's going to go away. So, that's his out. But justice is still being there. That's the problem with justice, though, when you seek justice, but it somewhat gets replaced with vengeance, because that's, I think, in my mind, a bit of what this is. You want there to be a long, drawn-out thing. Like the death penalty is a long, drawn-out process, but its cost on the taxpayer is insurmountable. I remember last I looked, somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's like $12 million is what it costs to kill somebody in the United States. And the reason why is because of the legal fees associated with that. Once they are hit with the death penalty, once that verdict comes in and that is the punishment, an automatic appeal is filed. And the appeals process takes time, and it takes money, and it takes energy, and that's why you'll find out there are people on death row that are there for like up to like 12 years. But the average cost of somebody on life in prison is like $48,000 a year, I think. So you can just see the cost there is just, I mean, absolutely different. It's absolutely different. Anyway, going on here. Victor Hayes has expressed frustration, bordering on anger, saying, "I'm grateful he's caught. But the fact of the matter is he's already lived a full life." Says Hayes, who was 21 when he and his 17-year girlfriend were attacked while in bed one night in a suburb east of Sacramento. The masked intruder bound and threatened to kill Hayes, and then pulled his girlfriend to another room, raped her multiple times before fleeing. At the time, he was working full-time as a police officer for the Northern California foothill town of Auburn, about a half hour away. Auburn fired D'Angelo in 1979 after he was caught shoplifting a hammer and a dog repellent from a hardware store. And then months later, he began a series of killings. So he was only raping people as a cop. Then they fired him. Then he started killing. He had a lot more free time. Now, Hayes did say authorities need to explain how D'Angelo was able to elude detection for so long, saying, "I'm very frustrated. Somebody needs to be held accountable." D'Angelo was accused of crimes that extend from 1973 to 1986. So I was off there. I wasn't in the 90s. Across more than a dozen California communities, starting with early bedroom ransackings and a killing in Visalia. The attacks included a series of rapes and 2 more killings in the Sacramento and Bay Area regions, and then culminated in 10 more home invasion killings in Southern California. That's insane, man. That is nuts. That's just fucking insane. This guy, like, it's almost impressive how monstrous he is. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that with jest or being jovial. I mean that. Like, you look at someone like this. There's a great line from Eddie Izzard's Dress to Kill comedy special that came out like 20 years ago. And he's talking about, like, I think it was Pol Pot. And Pol Pot killed like 1 million of his own people. And, Eddie Izzard's like, well, it's almost like saying, you want to say, well done. You must get up very early in the morning for this. What's your schedule like? Wake up, breakfast, death, 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 lunch, death, 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 afternoon tea, and it's just like, it's almost incomprehensible in how we view it and how we approach it and how we process it when you start thinking about the level of crimes this guy's committed. So it says here that many of those targeted were couples, and investigation by the Times documented more than 106 victims who were bound, tortured, raped, or killed. That's a lot of victims. No wonder they They're kind of like, maybe we should take this plea deal. For a decade after the last killing in 1986, police failed to link the crimes to a common attacker. The evolution of forensic DNA changed the case dramatically in 1996 when detectives first connected what had been known as the original Night Stalker killings, and then in 2001 when DNA again provided links to Central California's East Area rapist. But then detectives made no progress until 2017 when law enforcement realized they could use DNA recovered from old rape kits to search for relatives of the unknown killer on the family genetic databases. In early 2018, a Northern California team, including agents from the FBI and detectives from Sacramento and Contra Costa counties, used the controversial familial search method to trace a genetic path to D'Angelo. And that's true. I mean, they fucking nailed this guy. They absolutely nailed this guy using everything they could in regards to the DNA. And that's, again, that is actually causing a lot of these cold cases to get solved right now, which is super fascinating to me, that we're seeing a lot of this happen, that we're seeing a lot of these types of cases being solved through that DNA. And it's another one of those things people are going to talk about. Like, we talked about like facial recognition technology and how that's being used in some cases inappropriately. But then you look at this DNA, 23andMe DNA thing, and like you could sit there and go, I'm off the fucking grid. No pictures, no social media, no fingerprints, no nothing. You're never going to find me. And then like your aunt or a cousin gets a $99 23andMe or Ancestry.com kit. And they fucking swab it and they send it in and it pops. And then they know that they look at the DNA and they go, gotcha. And they figure out who the fuck you are. Like, that is going to be, we're going to see an avalanche of these old cases get solved. Anyone who's ever committed a cold case crime is in there, and they are, I guarantee you, they're probably aware of this shit right now. And that's going to fuck them up. And I'm okay with that because they're horrible, terrible people. Ryan Hartwell here says, have you seen the Jeffrey Epstein documentary? I have not. I need to watch it. And then he also says here, at least we finally know who he is, bittersweet as it is. Yeah, and that's the thing. That is the thing when it comes to this. When you look at these cases and you see the horrific nature of these cases, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, well, I kind of get it. This is, we get closure. Maybe not. I'm using colloquially, but we look at it and we go, yeah, that's another psycho off the street. We now know who they are. And I think it's going to get easier to detect as time goes on. But again, it becomes that larger, broader conversation about privacy. Are you okay with them using DNA to match to the genetic profile of a family member in order to then figure out who the hell you are? And are you okay with that? Like, because it could happen to anyone really. So it becomes this bigger factor. It's kind of an odd thing. I'm not going to lie, but it is true. It is where we find ourselves. Okay. So let's talk about this story coming out of Cali, where and this has been a weird thing going on right now. We're seeing a couple stories out of California and now other states as well of lynchings of black men being hung in trees, and it's frightening that is happening. It's frightening that is what we're seeing at this point in time. But I wanted to talk about it because it's like, what the fuck? So this is coming in from Southern California. Death of black man found hanged in Victorville under investigation. Family doubts initial findings of suicide. Well, let's find out more. So for the second time in 2 weeks, Southern California authorities have confirmed that they are investigating the death of a black man found hanged from a tree. The body of 38-year-old Malcolm Harsh was discovered shortly after 7 a.m. on May 31st in Victorville, San Bernardino County Sheriff Department spokesperson said. Deputies responded to the report that a male subject had hung himself near a homeless encampment near Zenda Street and 7th Street. A death investigation is being conducted. There were no indications at the scene that suggested foul play. The cause and manner of death are still pending. But if there's no foul play signs you can generally see it. There'd be like signs of struggling, multiple footprints, broken branches, things like that. he would look more disheveled. There might be like defensive wounds on him. There might be, things along those lines. But if they're not finding any of that, then that could be just a hanging. He hung himself, which is tragic. Now, but his family members are saying that they doubt that he killed himself. They're saying his cause of death has not been released to the family yet, but we are concerned that his death will be labeled as a suicide, as this is what was communicated to us upon confirmation of his death on the morning of June the 1st. Malcolm had a very recent conversation with his children about seeing them soon. He didn't seem to be depressed to anyone who truly knew him. Everyone who knew our brother was shocked to hear that he allegedly hung himself and don't believe it to be true, as well as the people who were there when his body was discovered. The explanation for suicide does not seem plausible. There are many ways to die, but considering the current racial tension, a black man hanging himself from a tree definitely doesn't sit well with us right now. We want justice, not comfortable excuses. And that, I mean, yeah, looking at where we are right now, the tension that's mounting in, places like Seattle and Portland and Los Angeles and, Atlanta and a lot of other places, that, the image of a black man hanging from a tree is not a good one. That is etched into the social fabric and the consciousness of our country, and it's never going to go away. It serves as a reminder of to not return to that era. We don't want to go back there. We're moving forward. We're progressing. It's kind of the whole point. However, in a situation like this, that is exactly what comes across as being, the image that you see in your mind, that this was a racially motivated attack. Now, police are saying suicide. But if the family, and this happened on June 1st, by the way, so we're talking, this is 2 weeks ago that he was found. Autopsy at this point could come back and give us what we need to know. But if they're withholding the cause of death from the family and it's a suicide, I mean, I can't be the only one that thinks this is fucking weird, right? Like, I can't be the only one that thinks that this is fucking weird. But we'll have to wait and see, because I mean, really, at this point, who knows what's going on here? Who knows? So let's continue moving forward. All right. So the first firefighters on the scene encountered by standards performing CPR in Harsh, Victorville spokesperson said. Our fire personnel took over and initiated advanced life support care protocol in an effort to restore a heartbeat, she said in a written statement. After 20 minutes, the resuscitation efforts were discontinued, which is in accordance with established protocols. Jones said the city offered its sympathies to the Harsh family. I mean, if they tried to resuscitate him for 20 minutes, that's pretty, they tried. They said here, we grieve for Malcolm's family and extend our deepest condolences. We understand the gravity of the situation and the family's desire for answers. We want lines of communication to remain open with the family, particularly knowing that they live out of state. We will be watching closely to see the results of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department investigation. And then it talks about here, 50 miles away in LA County, the family of Robert L. Fuller, a 24-year-old black man found hanging from a tree near Palmdale City Hall on Wednesday, were joined by city and county officials in their calls for an independent investigation into his death. So, and it says here, as in the Victorville death, coroner's office officials have yet to determine an official cause of death. So, I mean, and this is from just a couple days ago. So it's been 2 weeks and they haven't determined an official cause of death. I mean, obviously, if it's hanging, right? If it's fucking hanging, then that's going to be something that's going to be, like pretty easy to tell. I don't think that we're going to see something here that's not going to be, that's going to end up being, too crazy. If it's a hanging. So that to me says that there's something, there's something afoot. That's what it says to me. Something is something maybe going on there. They're not 100% sure. And if they're being cautious and not wanting to jump the gun, especially right now, that might make some case. I mean, again, and there's something to be said there about, are they taking their time due to the current situation involving racial tensions in this country? Are they taking their time and going, I don't know. Do we really want to? I mean, we don't want to invite any problems to Victorville. Victorville is a small town. There's not much in Victorville. There's not much at all. It's kind of a shithole, to be honest with you. It's a place you pass through when you're just, I don't know, you're in that area by Bakersfield in California. It's up to 15, I think. Either way, it's a shithole. I've been there. So there's that. But I do hope they release it soon because I think the family should know. I think the family should definitely know. So let's talk about this case. This is coming out of fucking Washington. This is kind of a crazy one because I live not too far from where this happened. So deputies have arrested a fugitive in connection with the disappearance of a Kent man. Now, this is, again, they don't have a body here, but the story is fascinating enough when you start kind of looking into it. And it says here that a man suspected in the disappearance of a Kent man, Ian Eccles, has been arrested. Deputies with the Kittis, County Sheriff's Office said that 34-year-old Jorge O. Alcantara Gonzalez was taken into custody about 3:30 p.m. on Sunday. So this was yesterday. Eccles, 41, was last seen in Kent on May 16th. Deputies said his cell phone and his record showed him in Kent at 4 p.m. that day, but there was no data after that. Eccles was headed to Cle Elum to meet with friends in the Liberty area to go hunting when he disappeared, according to deputies. He disappeared on or around May 17th. Now, what this article doesn't say, because I was trying to find like more information, but also something that has a bit of summary to it. What the article doesn't say, and this is interesting, is that when he went missing, his friends and family like went searching in that area because it's unlike this guy to be gone. It's unlike this guy to not show the hell up. And so when that happened, they went looking around for him, and that's when they saw his vehicle. Somebody was driving his vehicle, and it wasn't him. And so they alerted the authorities. The cops tracked the vehicle down. When they found that, they followed that vehicle, they found another stolen vehicle right next to it. And Jorge Gonzalez, at the time, they didn't know who he was, but the man had ran off into the woods. Right? He ran off into the woods. And so what they did is they started to block off certain amenities he could use, resources he could use in this wooded area. I'm assuming like parks and bathrooms and things like that. They started blocking a lot of that off. So that would drive him into kind of a desperation mode, which would then force him to kind of go in somewhere, to go in and kind of expose himself, so to speak. And that's exactly what happened. So it says here that a Teenaway area resident was walking in his neighborhood when he saw someone who appeared to look like Gonzalez in a neighbor's house and called 911. Deputies, U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife officers responded and surrounded the home and called for him to come out, and he complied. He was taken into custody for investigation of homicide and other crimes, which include multiple burglaries, thefts, possession of stolen vehicles, authorities have said. Sheriff Clay Meyer says the arrest of Jorge Alcantara concludes an uncertain and dangerous time for our county, especially for residents of the affected area. We are deeply grateful for the assistance of residents of the Liberty and Teenaway areas who have been consistently supportive throughout this time. We can now turn our attention to the successful prosecution of the crimes the suspect has committed, and most urgently, finding and recovering the body of Ian Eccles, giving his family peace. So they don't even have a body for this guy yet. They don't have a body. But it's been a month. It's been a month. So it's pretty clear to see that this guy's not with us anymore. Obviously there's that. And so what we have here is a situation where they've got this guy. They've got him with a stolen car. They've got him on multiple burglaries. All he has to, look, I'm just going to say, like, if this guy's defense lawyer just tells him, shut up, don't say a word about the body of Ian Eccles, then they're not going to be able to get him on it because there's like, he can say, I found it. I found the car or whatever thing. But to me, this kind of caught me as crazy because you have a guy here who, stole the car, allegedly after, killing this guy, And he lived in the woods. He was like, known to kind of live in the woods. That's where like he had survived out there for so long. But this is how he was getting by. So he made his way to murder, which to me was just kind of odd. If he's just doing random home burglaries, what prompted him to kill this guy? Did the guy resist and there was a fight and he died? I mean, there is information here we don't have, and information that I'm very interested to know more about, and I will be following this case as much as I possibly can because it is one of those things that's pretty fascinating to me. Ryan here asks, how close do you think we are to solving the Jonbenet Ramsey case? Fuck if I know, dude. I mean, like, if they found DNA on the body, they never said. If they found DNA on the body, they never said. So, if they didn't, I mean, I would hope at some point in time that they actually are able to do that. That they actually are able to find themselves with information on Jonbenet Ramsey. That would be great. I would love to see that. I would love them to be able to actually pull that off to get a solid end to that. But then again, who knows? I mean, actually, the next thing I want to talk about is actually something that kind of ties into what I'm thinking a little bit here, and that is, look, as we get to more of these cases where DNA is used to to solve them, because we are going to see a fair amount of that. What's going to happen if the person is no longer around, right? So the other day I talked about the Olof Palme assassination, the former Swedish prime minister who was gunned down in 1986, and they were looking for this guy for like 34 years. They were trying to figure out who he was, and they finally said that the number one suspect was a guy named Stig Eriksson. And Stig had died from suicide back in 2000. And so they were like, look, we have to close this case because we have the person of interest, the main suspect, is dead. And so the way I interpreted that was basically to mean that what we have here is a guy who is dead, but like they have enough circumstantial evidence to know that it's him, but they can't make that claim that it is him. And I think we're going to see a fair amount of that as time goes on, because the DNA, while damning in some of these cases, isn't always. It's not like it's a Hail Mary, but it's not a guaranteed win, because there's still the court of law to go through. So there's definitely that. We'll definitely talk. Hold on. What do I think about the Chad Daybell thing? My tube. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let me just get into this next case, but that's a fascinating one too. Illiterate Inc. says, how convenient. I don't quite know what you're referring to here, sir, so let me know. I appreciate that one. And okay, where's that link there? Okay. So this is one that popped up from a couple of days ago. A Florida Keys murder cold case from 1991 has been solved, says the sheriff. And I love these stories. I love when cold cases get solved. I feel like somewhere Robert Stack, like Robert Stack is straight up going, yeah, like, I'm assuming the dude's probably in heaven. He's either going like, I did good. Because, Unsolved Mysteries really did pique a lot of people's interest in a lot of these cases that otherwise back in the day when we didn't have the internet wouldn't get as much play. So anyway, let's say here. So this is from Monroe County, Florida. It became known as the Ballentine Jane Doe homicide, and it was chronicled on Unsolved Mysteries and other shows. 3 decades later, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office says they've cracked the cold case. Sheriff Rick Ramsey, that's kind of a cool name, announced on Monday that the previously unknown young woman discovered February 15th, 1991, in a wooded area off US 1 near mile marker 35, has now been identified as Wanda Deanne Kirkham, who was 18 at the time and lived in New York. So this is Wanda. A picture of her from 1989, 2 years before her death. So she was 16 when this was taken. Doesn't look like a 1980s photo. I'm not going to lie. It looks like a little bit older. Now, the sheriff's office says that the killer has been identified as Robert Lynn Bradley, who was killed in a homicide in Texas in 1992 at the age of 31. So think about this. They say that this guy, Robert Lynn Bradley, which is this dude right here, killed what's her name? Wanda. Yeah, Wanda Dean. Wanda Deanne. And then he died in a homicide a little over a year later. I'm not the only one that's sitting and go, fuck karma, right? Fucking karma. Now, the agency says that its major crimes unit detective Vince Werner partnered with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and used new DNA technology to find the victim and the killer. Saying, I'd like to personally thank Major Crimes Unit Detective Vince Weiner and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for their efforts in solving this very serious and tragic crime. This case is a testament and shining example of this agency's commitment to solving crime, no matter how old the case and no matter the challenges. Investigators say that Kirkham was never officially reported missing to law enforcement, and both of her parents are now deceased. And that is tragic, isn't it? She was never reported missing. They found her. They found her body. They found her body. But she was never reported missing by her, like, to law enforcement. So they couldn't identify her when they found her back in 1991, almost 30 fucking years ago. And now her parents are dead, and they never. Why did her parents not report her missing? That's got to tell you some shit, doesn't it? That's got to tell you there's more to this fucking story. Anyway, let's find out more. Bradley's DNA was obtained from the 1991 crime scene in the Keys. The sheriff's office says that DNA was recently compared to DNA from Tarrant County, Texas, where he was killed and determined to be a match. There's evidence that suggests he lived in Miami in late November 1990. Sheriff's office says Kirkham was seen by witnesses hitchhiking out of Key West on February 14th, 1991. Her body was found by windsurfers the next morning off a dirt road that leads to an area locals known as the Horseshoe, east of Big Pine Key and west of Bahia Honda Key. Kirkham was face down, wearing only a bikini top with which she had been strangled. Forensic examination determined she had been beaten and sexually assaulted before being strangled to death. So this guy picked up a hitchhiker who was 18 years old and strangled her, beat her, raped her, and then dumped her body in the water and went about his business. You know, I mean, fuck, dude, that's fucking insane. That's pretty fucking insane. You know, and the thing is, the guy's dead, and because he's, you know, he would have been 31 30 years ago. This guy would have been 60, almost 60 or something like that right now. You know, still eligible for a long time behind bars, but no, he got iced in a homicide in Texas a year later. And I kind of want to know more details about that too, because, like, you know, when you get the details of this case and you see exactly what happened to this, you know, to Wanda there, you really want someone like Robert to kind of suffer, don't you? I do. I mean, you know, he raped her, beat her, strangled her, and then I don't even know what order that was in. And then dumped her, went about his business. You know, this was a bad guy, and I guess he got his karma a year later. Still tragic nonetheless, though. Still absolutely tragic nonetheless. So let me just quickly talk about this Chad Daybell thing. So this, so those of you guys who don't know, this is the Lori Vallow situation. I don't know. I mean, for one, we now have confirmation that the bodies discovered on his property were, in fact, JJ and Tylee. I want to make sure I get that right. I mispronounced it in my other video, and I got torn into asshole because I read it wrong. And so, anyway. And the kids, Lori Vallow's kids, that went missing back in September. And it was you know, not in a good way, but funny, that she was, you know, told by the courts, hey, you need to produce your kids. And she's like, nah, I'm cool. No, she's in jail. And now the bodies of her children have been found. And her current husband, Chad Daybell, I think it's her current husband, is currently behind bars. She's currently behind bars. The reign of terror is over. But now what's going to happen with this, MyTube? Yeah, I said Tylee. What's going to happen with this now is we're going to get into the juicy details. And when I say that I can't personally fucking wait for this Netflix documentary, I'm not kidding. I was actually getting ready to do a long form video on the whole situation I was prepping documents. I was prepping information. I was trying to do some preliminary research on it, and then the FBI goes and raids Chad Daybell's uh, property. And at that point, I'm like, well, fuck. I can't. Kind of pointless now, I think, because it's now it's all topical over this shit. But I still want to when they turn on each other, I'll probably do something then. When they turn on each other, I'll do a long one, not something like this where I'm just like streaming and talking. But I'll dig into it. And I'll put together a video, which I think are fun to do. They're fun to do. So I really hope I could make a 2-hour video on them. I could. Yeah, it would take a while. My first experience learning about that case actually was listening to the True Crime Daily podcast. They talked about it. I was listening to it as I was out making deliveries, and it caught my attention. I'm like, wow, this is fucked up. But like, there's like so much more that's out there. So it's like a lot of research, a lot of digging, a lot of time spent on Reddit, I think, and really dive into that whole story. And I might take the time. I might just make it a side project and really kind of do my best to make it something entertaining and not just my usual content, which I enjoy kind of dissecting stories on an individual basis. But this is something that is so involved that you need a fuckload of time to research it. Anyway, let's see here. Aside from Chad Daybell, do I know any other writers who've committed murder? Not really. Not really that I've seen. Writers normally, I mean, I don't think writers generally commit murder. There was there's one. Again, I was watching one of those True Crime Daily, Inside Edition Dateline 2020 fucking videos about this dude out of Canada who was catfishing guys and trying to get them to go to his house, where he basically was like mimicking being a slasher, and he killed, like, he lured one dude there, and the guy like went into the garage, like, oh, hey, why don't you come into my garage and then come around the back of the house, right? And the guy's like, okie dokie, artichoke, and he goes in there, and then he gets assaulted by this guy in a mask, is hitting him with like this stun gun, like 800,000 volts, and I think he like maces him or something like that. But the guy gets away. He almost doesn't get away, but he gets away. And then he's embarrassed, so he doesn't tell anyone about it, because you never hear about this, by the way. Men get attacked, they get embarrassed and don't tell anyone about it. That's a whole thing with men's rights, but still, it's a factor. And then this guy doesn't say anything, but another dude gets catfished by the same guy. And that dude ends up getting straight up killed. And then the whole thing kind of unravels as they start trying to investigate it. And basically what happened was the guy who killed him was a filmmaker who wanted to do a horror movie. And I was like, I think, they don't specifically outright say, but I think he wanted to create like an 8mm-esque snuff film, or at least get the experience of what it would be to be a serial killer, and live it out in order to tell the story authentically. I don't know, very method. It's kind of how I interpreted it. And then, they caught the guy and he finally confessed to it. But I was like, fuck, that would be a good fucking movie. I'm like, that story would be a good fucking movie. And there's a lot of these cases that I've been catching up on, and really fascinates me. The human condition, what would bring us to want to kill other people, and then just like the freak out that happens after it's done, and like the dismemberment of the bodies and the attempt to try to clean a crime scene. And most people don't know shit about how to clean a crime scene. They don't know anything about that kind of crap. I mean, they watch the TV and they think the TV is going to tell them how it's done. And the truth of the matter is the TV is probably more responsible for catching criminals than getting away with it. Because people on TV, the homicide writers, they're telling an entertaining story, but what happens with actual police work is not what you see in TV and movies. And I've talked about this before, but I did take a 2-day homicide writers course back in 2012, and that was fascinating, super fascinating to learn about how the ins and outs of an investigation. Very methodical, Very, very time consuming, and they go over everything, and they want to make sure they can investigate to get the details that they need in order to catch the person. And what you see on TV, someone gets murdered in a fucking show, and then 20 minutes, like a scene later, they're at the crime scene, and you have like fucking 30 cops and people out there with like photographs, and you're like, oh, it seems pretty busy. This is what normally happens. Like, no, they don't have that many people just kind of traipsing through a crime scene that could be disturbing evidence and everything else. So, they don't have that. But when you watch these shows, they have to get through it real quick to get on with the story. So people watch CSI and they think, "Ooh, I can commit a crime now because I know what they do on CSI. I have their fucking playbook. I'm that kind of person. I have their playbook." So yeah, there's that. Oh, hey, Joey MCE, $2 super chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. But yeah, there's there's a lot that goes into that kind of crap. All right, let me dive into what's the next thing I want to talk about here. Okay, here's one that I came across. It's gonna make you guys mad. I'm just saying. It's gonna make you guys mad because I'm not a big fan of animal abuse myself. However, this is a story that popped up out of Oklahoma, and this is fucking. You gotta love that warning right there. Warning: some viewers may find this story to be disturbing. Yeah, because you have badly beaten dogs, dead dogs, and cats repeatedly dumped in a ditch. So somebody's out there. Somebody's out there doing some shit. So let's find out more. Oklahoma City. An investigation is underway after dogs' bodies were found dumped along the side of an Oklahoma City road. It's a problem residents say has been happening for months. She says it's not just dogs, but also cats that look like they've been killed and dumped in tubs, blankets, and trash bags. The woman we spoke with says she used to love walking down the road near her home until she started seeing animals' bodies. Yeah. If you're going down the road and it looks like, Pet Cemetery and shit, that's a problem. She's tried to get help, but there's been no answer, so she called the local media, saying, "I've called 911. They transferred me to animal control, saying we'll get somebody out there, but I've called before and it's the same thing." For the last few months, the woman says that she's been seeing dead animals line the ditch on a portion of Classen near Northwest 104th. Every 2 to 3 weeks, there are fresh dead dogs out here in this ditch. Imagine at what point in time imagine having to utter that phrase. Every 2 to 3 weeks, there are dead dogs in this ditch. I'm just, like, what the fuck? It says here that on Wednesday, she found 2 dogs in tubs with gloves nearby. One of them has all the skin removed off the dog, and the other one looks like it's just been killed. She says the animals are sometimes wrapped in blankets, other times left in garbage bags, leading her to believe the animals aren't being hit by cars or attacked by wildlife. Yeah, well, if you find a dog and it's been skinned, I'm pretty sure a local coyote isn't going to sit there and want to practice, being the next Buffalo Bill. I don't think that's going to happen. It's not going to dig a hole and put the dog in there and go, "Put lotion on the skin or it gets the hose again." It's not going to happen. This is some seriously fucked up shit. If you have a situation where you have dogs being skinned and the local authorities are like, we're just going to transfer it along over to fucking animal control. No. That is a serial killer who is practicing. And he's dumping the bodies there because, for one, no one's saying anything. And it's his dump site. But it's such a dumb dump site. I'm just going to dump them on the side of the road. Here's the thing, lady. Here's what I would do if I came across that. Personally, I would set up a fucking camera. I would set up an outside camera and just point it at that. I'd get a couple different angles. I'd invest the money, get a couple angles, and I'd point the camera at everything. And then that dude rolls up. It's all of a sudden like, "I got your fucking license plate, bitch." Right? You fucking Nancy Drew that shit. But I mean, I give her credit for calling the cops or calling the media because the cops are apparently fucking useless. Now, she says here, it's either somebody fighting them, or if you don't want to take them to the pound, at least they'll euthanize them and it will be a different way to die instead of them being beaten to death. After speaking with Olivia, News 4 called the Oklahoma City animal control to get answers. They promptly send a crew out to pick up the dead animals and begin an investigation. Olivia is now hoping that this will come to a stop, saying it is really, really, really disturbing. Yeah, that's really fucking disturbing. Because let's look at this here, look at this here. We'll just, I'll just, you guys won't be able to hear it, but let's see. I can just find an image. We'll bring it up. She's got the mask on. Good for her. She's keeping social distancing. All right. So, I mean, like, we can bring this up full screen here. Let's bring this back. Okay. So, you can see, I mean, look, if someone's got those tubs right there, they come from Walmart. All right. They're like $4 a pop. They come from Walmart. So it's easy to track those things back. It's really easy to track those things back. Local Walmart is where you would get those particular types of tubs. Why? Because they're cheap as shit. So you find them, there's a barcode on the bottom of that thing, you scan it, they run it back through the system, and they're going to be able to go and look to see who purchased tubs. And then they'll be able at that point to narrow it down. More or less, most people are probably going to be doing it based on using credit cards, which is going to then have all their billing information attached to it. So then they'll be able to really narrow it down. But I don't know if I would sit there and say that this has something to do with fucking a dog fighting ring. I don't know. Let me I'll Google. I'll Google it real quick. I'll just fucking Google it real quick. Let's see, Oklahoma City dog fighting. Maybe there's okay. All right. Well, okay. Maybe we're onto something here. Maybe she's onto something. Let me bring this up here. So this is something from February. Oklahoma County. Man accused of dog fighting faces almost 24 charges. Saying here, an Oklahoma County man was arrested and faces 21 counts of animal abuse and facilitating dog fighting after several dogs were found chained up and underweight at his home. I think this is the guy right here. Saying they had some scarring. We had a potential second owner come forward. I could tell you that they have been fought. The authorities are pushing for felony charges against the suspect. We will prosecute and do what we can to ensure it's stopped and those animals don't have to suffer throughout that. The suffering was brought to a halt when 24 dogs were rescued in December 2019 from a home in Spencer after the dogs were pit bulls, some of which were as young as 6 months old. We had a couple that were obviously highly, highly aggressive and some that were obviously scared and timid throughout the situation, and some were really friendly. People at Oklahoma City Animal Welfare, where the dogs were taken, are glad someone reported Ingram and shared the warning signs, saying the obvious things that you're going to see is dogs being tied up and separated when they're not able to get to each other on large chains. And then there's other things you'll see like treadmills. That's a new one to me. I didn't know you'd see treadmills on this kind of situation. But really, that's fucking, I thought I had it brought up. I'm sorry. That's fucking terrible. That is actually really fucking terrible that they ended up, it's possible. What do you guys think? You think in dog fights, or you think in serial killer? I think the skinned individual is going to be the one. I think the skinned dog is a giveaway, because where I live in Olympia, Washington, and a couple summers ago we had a cat killer, and the cat killer killed like 11 cats that we know of, but it was like he surgically dismembered like their spine, took their spine out, like they were practicing surgery on it, and then it went dead. Like 11 cats were found. I'm sure that there were more that were never found. And the thing is, I know where there are locations around town here where there are a lot of stray cats. And there's some mobile home parks that I deliver to that have a lot of stray cats. They're very friendly. And like it's so difficult to like not want to take them home with me because they're so cute and adorable. I love cats. But that ended up happening a couple of years ago, and then we saw a spike the following summer. It wasn't last summer, I think it was 2018, where there was a spike in the same kind of animal deaths north of Seattle. But it was a one article that I saw, and then I haven't seen anything else in the meantime. And I monitor all that shit, so I don't know. Grok here says, Yeah. It will pop up here and say he says don't fuck with cats, and I completely agree. That's a great documentary, by the way. I sat down. This is true. I sat down to go to bed one night, and I'm all like, you know what? I'm just gonna kind of like zone out on some Netflix for like 20, 30 minutes and just kind of wind down. And I'm thumbing through Netflix, and then I saw the poster for Don't Fuck with Cats, and I thought, yeah, I'll check it out. All right, how bad could it be? I watched the whole fucking thing. I was up to like 5 o'clock in the morning. I watched the whole fucking thing. I'm sitting there like snacking because it was intense, right? And I was like snacking on like loud potato chips. And my girlfriend's all texting me like, "Would you stop? You're waking me and the baby up." And I'm like, "It's fucking insane." Yeah, don't fuck with cats. Couldn't watch it. No, no, no. You shouldn't watch it. You should watch it. They don't show you cruelty to animals. They show you before and after, very briefly, but not the actual act of what this guy does. What's fucked up is what it leads to, and everything else. And there are a couple elements of that documentary that are interesting because they kind of like they overlook a certain thing where like this group of people who are trying to track down who this killer is, and this is the whole again the issue with internet vigilantism. And they kind of this guy comes into the group and he says he's the one who did it, and he lives like in South Africa, and they fucking descend upon him with the fire of 1,000 angry gods. This guy never did it, but he said he did it to get the attention. And then they bullied him about it so much he fucking killed himself. And like of course none of them knew that was going to happen. But after that happened, like then like a few of them they fucking splintered off to keep the investigation going but on more of a private basis and not to like go into the crazy shit. I mean, but they kind of like they talk about it in the documentary, but they fucking fly right the fuck past it. And I'm like, all right, I get why they don't want to like they don't want to. These guys are kind of the heroes of the story. They don't want to be like associated with the suicide. So I get that. But you should watch it. It's a good documentary. Let's see here. Ryan here says I think the Poughkeepsie tapes come to mind when talking about found footage serial killer perspective, found footage film. Have you seen the mockumentary? I have seen the mockumentary. I have seen the Poughkeepsie tapes. That movie fucked me up, man. That movie fucked me up. That movie really fucked me up. That was a creepy fucking film. That really got me. And actually, like, I toned my movie down because that film fucked me up. If I'm being honest with you, I thought about like going full on gore, but it was the way that the Poughkeepsie tape was like shot and how creepy it was. And I wouldn't mind doing another found footage film. I want to do more found footage movies. And I want to do them where it's like I want to tell the story about it, but I want it to be very creepy. And I have a couple scripts that I've written that I need to probably do something with, and that are I'm hoping to be able to like capture that kind of creep factor, but not make it as like just like bitterly cynical. Is how I feel that movie was. But maybe I need to watch it again. It's been a while. It's been a while. Anyway, let's take a look here at the last thing I want to talk about today. And this, of course, is hey, it's looking at a Wikipedia page, but I saw an article pop up about the death of Molly Bish. It's been almost 20 years, which is why it popped up in some feeds. And I was looking at some of the stories surrounding it, and I figure like as a quick summary for what's going on, the Wikipedia page seems to have a fair amount of information. So I thought we could take a look at this because this again is a cold case where I think people are really going to like, maybe eventually DNA will play a factor in this. Preach. The movie we're talking about is the Poughkeepsie tapes, which I think you could find a fair amount of it on YouTube. The guys who directed that did the movie Devil that M. Night Shyamalan produced, a movie that took place in an elevator. They did that one. I heard that was pretty good. I never saw it though. Okay, let us dive in to the death of Molly Bish as told to us by Wikipedia. So Molly Ann Bish was a 16-year-old American girl from a rural Worcester County, Massachusetts, who disappeared while working as a lifeguard in her hometown of Warren, Massachusetts. Her remains were found 3 years later in neighboring Hampden County after what became the largest search in state's history. Now, there's an old article on Something Awful about like 7 white women who stopped the world. And when you find, and this is true, this is where you will always see this. If a blonde-haired white woman goes missing, people fucking stop what they're doing to go and find her, more than literally anybody else. And it doesn't, like, because I feel like it sometimes takes away from like other cases. Like, for example, oh God, what was her name? There was like a 3-year-old girl who went missing in San Diego back in the day, and I forget her name right now. But it's not Jonbenet, but she went missing, and it ended up like being her neighbor who killed her. Like David Westerfield was his name. Let me just bring that up real quick. David Westerfield. Yeah. So Danielle Van Dam, that was her name. This is February 2002. But there was this big how to do with her. It was all throughout San Diego County, and everyone was like losing their mind. There's missing posters everywhere. It's on everyone's topic of conversation. 3-year-old, little cute girl disappears from a prominent, affluent neighborhood. Well, at the same time, a little boy went missing. That was taken in broad daylight from a park, and he was black. And what happened was his dad was with him, and his dad left the boy at the park to go back home to get something to drink. It was like right there, like right next door to it. But when he came back, someone grabbed the kid. As far as I know, they never found him. But the media, like they tried to piggyback on the Danielle Van Dam case, but it just did not have the same kind of social media presence, of media presence, not social media, it wasn't around at the time, but of media presence. And it's like, I think you can look at like the differences. You have inner city child goes missing, affluent neighborhood child goes missing. But then again, I think maybe the details of like the sex life of the parents and potentially the neighbor and the orgies might have kept the conversation going a bit more. There's a lot there with that too. Anyway, let's get back to this because it's kind of crazy. All right. So, what's her disappearance here? So, in the summer of 2000, 16-year-old Molly Bish began working as a lifeguard at Commons Pond in Warren, Massachusetts. On June 26th, so we're 10 days away, by the way, the day before her disappearance, her mother, Maggie, saw a mustached man in a white car parked in the lot of the beach where Molly's lifeguard post was located. Although he seemed suspicious at the time, she thought no further about him until Molly's disappearance on June 27th. Maggie drove Molly to Commons Pond and dropped her off near the lifeguard station. Maggie reportedly saw no sign of the stranger from the previous day or his white sedan. However, another witness reported that he saw a man matching the stranger's description in the pond's parking lot just minutes before Molly arrived. A local worker who also reported that he saw a similar car parked at a cemetery connected to the pond by a path. Maggie Bish was the last known person to see Molly before her disappearance. Several hours later, police contacted Molly's parents, informing them that no lifeguard had been on duty all day and that Molly's belongings had been left unattended at her station. So, okay. So when you look at Commons Pond, I'll bring it up I'll see if I can bring it up. We'll get a look at it, I guess. Okay. So when you bring it up here, you can see that it's not the biggest pond in the world. It's not the biggest. You kind of zoom out. I mean, it's okay. It's a decent size, I guess. There you go. Satellite imagery. Okay, it's pretty big, but you got this is like the only beach that's here. So, well, this is more recent. Maybe got overgrown by then. But it feels like this is where people would be hanging out. There's not much over here. So, where would the person go? If she's got a lifeguard tower, I'm assuming that's possibly it or something that was over here. I mean, there's there ain't much, man. There ain't much out there at all. So, there's clearly people who live over here. There's a neighborhood here, but they're a ways away from a freeway. You got there's really nothing. So the 19 comes through town. That's about it. That's the only thing. The 19 comes through and then they're gone. So that's kind of crazy. I mean, think about that one. Anyway, let's go back to the Wikipedia page here. So an extensive search was immediately launched, and it was to become the largest and most expensive search for a missing person ever undertaken in Massachusetts. Her case was profiled on numerous American television shows like Disappeared, America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries in 48 Hours. Is Disappeared? Is this one on IDTV? By the way, I just want to quickly point out, Disappeared is like the worst show on IDTV. It is literally like a cock tease of a show, and I say that because you know by the title that America's Most Wanted will spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes on something. It's a short segment. So you don't build up like a 45-minute amount of interest into the show. Disappeared, you'll build up like the 45 minutes into the story and you want a resolution because we're socialized to get those kind of resolutions. And then nothing. And it just gives you like true crime blue balls is how I view it. I stopped watching it. But anyway, it's been on there. And Unsolved Mysteries in 48 Hours. A hunter who had seen a blue bathing suit in the woods on Whiskey Hill in Palmer in late 2002. In May 2003, he mentioned this to Tim McGugan, who contacted police in a tense search of the area, soon located Molly's body. It was found 5 miles from her family home. So that's the thing, right? They found her 5 miles away. Hold on a second. That's a little bit weird, isn't it? Right? She was found 5 miles from her home. And her mom was the last one to drop her off. And no one else saw her there. And all of her stuff was apparently at the thing. I mean, look, I don't want to sit there. I'm not going to sit there and make accusations. This is all speculation. It's all speculatory. But I can't really, I just kind of wonder if something else happened. There was a couple different things that happened here. 4 years later, her parents founded the Molly Bish Center and Foundation in collaboration with Anna Maria College. There was a Connecticut resident charged with kidnapping, and was briefly under investigation. That didn't go anywhere. There was a new suspect had investigated Rodney Stanger, a Florida resident convicted of murdering his girlfriend who had lived in Southbridge, Massachusetts, a few miles away, for more than 20 years. He moved to Florida a year after Bish's murder. Following the murder of Crystal Morrison, his girlfriend of 20 years, her sister alerted Massachusetts authorities that Stanger was known to have access to a white car similar to the one seen the day before Bish's disappearance. He's also known to fish in Commons Pond and hunt in the woods where her body was found. In addition, he also closely matched the description provided by Maggie Bish of the man seen in the white sedan the day before the disappearance. He's not been charged in the case. But then it goes on to say here that in 2009, when Stanger was being investigated for the murder, police also questioned him in connection with the 1993 murder of Holly Piranian, who went missing in Sturbridge. Bish and Piranian were the same age in 1993, and Bish had written a letter of hope to Piranian's parents in 1993. Oh, that's kind of sad. He was not charged in the case, though. In 2012, forensic evidence led authorities to David Poliat, who died in 2003 as a person of interest in that particular case. So, again, people are dying and then there's nothing to do. Then you had Gerald Battistoni, a.k.a. confidential informant number 62 for the Eastern Hampden County Narcotic Task Force, was named as a suspect in the death by a private investigator. Battistoni served time in prison for repeatedly raping a teenage girl in the early 90s. He attempted suicide in prison after news articles identified him as a potential suspect. He had a criminal record dating back to 1980, had been in the area where Molly's body was found, and resembles a composite sketch of the man Maggie saw in the parking lot before Molly disappeared. After he was named a suspect, Private Detective Dan Malley and the Bish family asked for DNA testing to be done, and they sent that to Texas. This was back in 2015. He died in Jamaica Plains at a hospital in Boston in 2014. So he was already dead when they sent off his DNA to go get tested. But then as of June 2020, there are no arrests. So 20 years later. But I find this to be interesting. The linked article here is from HLN, and it doesn't exist because I went looking for it. So that is something that's going on with this right here. So the way I kind of view it with this particular story, with this case, I mean, look, obviously there's people looking for a guy in a white car. People are looking for, whoever could match that description. But look, finding her body, and what this article, what the Wikipedia article doesn't actually say, is that her body was found. Like, not all of her body was found. Remains of hers were found. Only 26 bones were found, meaning that when she was discarded, animals, they got in there, they tore it apart. After she decomposed long enough, they just scattered her bones everywhere. I mean, they might be finding them occasionally for a long time, which is fucking horrific. But she goes to this, she's a lifeguard. She's 16. She goes out there. What happened in the morning? I mean, like, could it be possible that her mom and her dad killed her? Just hear me, follow me on this one. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just kind of running down a speculatory thought process here. Maybe the kid saw something. Maybe something's going on there. Because they found her body 5 miles from the home. And it wouldn't be that difficult if no one was there in the morning, if no one else was at the pond. And I showed you guys the pond. It's not very big. If she was the first one at the pond, I mean, who's to say her mom didn't go over there in the morning and then just or her dad or whomever, drop off the items, dispose of her body, and then go, oh no, she's gone, I mean, anything is possible. Again, that's like, I'm speculating. I don't know if that's true. I don't really believe it. I'm just kind of like thinking to myself, like, looking at the evidence, looking at what's said, my mind starts to really ask myself the question, was this an inside job? And they just said that they saw someone who matched it. Because they go, oh yeah, it was a dude with a mustache in a white car. Well, you saw the aerial photos. That's not a big area. That's not a big area at all. These people are gonna fucking know each other. The people who go to Commons Pond are gonna know each other. The people in that area, they're gonna all know each other. I mean, these neighborhoods are sometimes pretty tight knit. Like, my neighborhood has like an kind of like an intranet, specifically for our neighborhood to communicate and like talk to each other. Like, they set that up to make sure we could like look after each other ourselves. People they know each other. They pay attention in these kind of smaller towns. So anything is really possible at this point. Anything is possible. I don't know yet specifically. What's going to happen here. I am, let's see, purchasing sex trafficked people matter. And a psychopath would chill in the woods. I don't disagree with you on either one of those fronts. I do think a psychopath would chill in the woods. And I do think that that sex trafficking happens, and their lives have value, 100%. So that's something I don't think we disagree on. But so far that's all I got. What do you guys what do you guys think about this? Do you think she was kidnapped and killed, or do you think something more sinister happened? Let me know. What you guys have to say. I'm probably going to wrap this up here in a few minutes. I got to get to bed. This is more of kind of an impromptu thing anyway. I just wanted to do something kind of fun. Talk about some stories I'd found. There was, I guess, an update on the Madeleine McCann situation, which I'm going to do a full video on that in the morning. Kind of because there's basically saying now, like, the parents are being told that she's dead. We knew, a couple weeks ago when they announced that they had a suspect that they believe to be the person. At that point, you can kind of basically think to yourself, yeah, what's generally what's going on, and that it's not a good thing. So at this point, that's where we find ourselves. All right, let me check everything. Yeah, preach. Yeah, man. I don't do that many lives. I wouldn't mind doing more of them as as we go on. I don't want to do them like I have to figure out more of a format. Uh, Mostly because like not everything happens every day, and I look at like a lot of true crime shit. Like if you want to see, like I'll show you guys. I'll show you guys this before I wrap it up. Let me see. Actually, hold on a second. Okay. When I look for true crime content to cover, this is my RSS feed. I have a lot of RSS feeds that I read through a bunch of different topics, but this is just for like the last couple hours, right? Look at this here. Like the last two, one day. I mean, this is just a ton of shit. This is all like, from around the world. Just a bunch of different stories. So I look through to see what kind of pops out, right? You know, and then I've also got down here, I've got for murder of what's being like what's talked about right now, murder wise. Here's one: pursuit of justice for a murdered, pregnant woman. Um, that just dropped a little bit ago. Let's see. It happened in Ghana, apparently. I have to like, read that story. So talk about all that stuff. There's a lot of shit here. I read a lot. As you can see, I've got a lot of I got cinema, movie news, YouTube, Netflix, MCU, DCEU, Star Wars, gaming, Gamergate content, which is just people who were prominent Gamergate outlets and whatnot. News sources, which I don't ever read this. I gotta get rid of that. What the fuck sources, like what the fuck news, right? Which all this shit. Reddit, which is like a lot of mostly it's just today I learned, which I just like to read those because I think they're fun. Like we got like all these outlets here. This is more like the conservative side of things a little bit, talking about crap. So there's a lot there that like I look at that I read into. So I like to make sure. Let's see. Ryan Jokobo says, "Is D'Angelo the Zodiac killer?" No, he's not. The Zodiac killer was active. I think in the late 1960s. I think like I want to say like 69 is when the Zodiac killer was active. The Zodiac killer was not active during the time when the Golden State Killer was doing his things because that was over the span of many years. He committed a lot of murders. The Zodiac Killer, from my understanding, based upon the general information that I have, has a lot more to do with like he wanted to taunt the media. He wanted the attention. The Golden State Killer he didn't want the attention. He wanted the thrill of doing it. But you can tell he used his experience being an officer in order to you know to really kind of evade capture. The Zodiac Killer was more ballsy. He didn't kill that many people, but he left a mark. He left an impact. And given the rate of okay, so the Golden State Killer, effectively what he was doing was he was changing up his playground because he knew what cops look for. That's the thing. That's the scary, if you watch Chappelle's 846, that new special that Netflix put out, they talk about Christopher Dorner, who back in 2013 was an LAPD officer who was fired after he filed a complaint against his supervisor for excessive force, I believe. They fired him. So the man basically decided, he got so pissed off, he decided to wage warfare, asymmetrical warfare against the LAPD, killed a couple officers, killed I think one member's family. I think there was an innocent person that he killed too. And then he fled out to Big Bear, which is a mountain east of LA. And they found him in a cabin, and they brought like 400 officers to take this guy out, and they took him out. They fucking took him out, And the way Chappelle had put it is like these guys are trained to fight back against evil, and this is them just fighting back against what they perceive as being evil, using the training that they have. So if you apply that same logic to D'Angelo and the Golden State Killer, he knows police procedure because it's generally the same. The same playbooks, the same textbooks, the same plans, the same collection technology. It's pretty, it's pretty standard across the board. They want to, they don't, the investigative measures or methods don't necessarily change outside of changing with technology. So in any case, this is before a lot of forensic stuff. So he knew that. So he knew he would have cover on that front. He changed how he did it. He did it in a multitude of places, and just thought he probably would get away with it until his family member decided to do a DNA profile and ended up getting caught. I've done a DNA profile, so like dude, I worked with the LA Unified School District. My fingerprints are with the government. I had a guard card when I was a security guard. The FBI has my fingerprints. The system has my DNA. I am a catchable person if I've done anything bad, of which I haven't. I'm just saying, those of us who haven't done anything have no problem going into the system. Although there is a lot there that comes into Orwellian aspects of privacy and whether or not privacy is going a bit is going a bit too far in the opposite direction. Sorry. And as a result of that, this is kind of funny. This is true. There's a George Orwell statue outside of the BBC in London, and apparently they're going to take it down because staff complained about George Orwell. That is not in line with the values of the BBC. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, Jesus Christ, if you ever want to just look at something and go, yeah, there's something rotten in Denmark, it's when the BBC starts getting rid of George fucking Orwell. I mean, but think about it like this: how many people out there did the oh God, I lost my train of thought. I don't know. I'm just saying it's all fucked up right now. So anyway, I'm gonna go to bed. I'm obviously kind of tired. So I do appreciate everyone coming in. You know what? I appreciate people watching and commenting. I appreciate the likes, and if you guys want to toss some more likes on that, you know what? Counter the dislikes because you have some fucking low rent trolls that are like, oh, I'm gonna fucking be a dick at fucking 1 o'clock in the morning. There's that. And if you want to get more true crime, tune in tomorrow talking about Madeline McCann, maybe something else. And then if there's some crazy shit, I might dive on in and do more with the Murder, Death, Kill podcast because I'm a very unoriginal person. But I did find out no one else has taken that name, so I now claim that name for me. All right, guys, have yourself a great evening. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. And peace the hell out.